Nestled among the mansions of Australia's most expensive real estate, overlooking Sydney Harbour, is one of the country's most storied schools. The Cranbrook School is the alma mater of captains of industry and billionaires.
Driving past the school that looks so incredible from the outside, but in my mind it's a facade because I know what happened on the inside.
You live not so far away from Cranbrook now. How do you feel when you go past that place?
I avoid it.
Persistent debates about toxic masculinity have led to a push for private boys' schools to go co-educational. But what's often lost in all of that is whether institutions like this are safe places for girls.
Even if you don't like the idea of the fact that a boys' school is being spotlighted, what about the girls?
Many female staff have left the school bewildered at their treatment. Investigations have been launched, non-disclosure agreements signed, settlements paid.
I just don't want another female to experience what I've experienced. It's like lambs to the slaughter, and it needs to stop.
At the end of 2022, the entire council, bar one member of the prestigious boys' school Cranbrook, resigned after a very public war was waged with the headmaster. At the time, the row was blamed on debates about the school going co-ed. But our investigation has uncovered a very different picture. In this episode of Four Corners, we investigate allegations that have, until now, remained hidden, and why what happens at elite institutions like this matters for the rest of us. It's a spectacular Sydney afternoon and a teacher is crossing Sydney Harbour to attend a meeting at one of Australia's most exclusive private schools.
So I'm going in to meet with the headmaster.
Fiona Richards hasn't been able to work at the school for months.
I was ready to teach. I had the capacity to teach. The only thing stopping me was an inability to address the workplace bullying and to ensure that the place was a safe place for me to return to.
Ms Richards has been trying to call Cranbrook to account for the treatment she says she received at the hands of a circle of senior men at the school.
I don't feel very hopeful, frankly. I just don't. I've realised that this is a bit of a pattern of behaviour and I'm not the only one.
And you don't think that the behaviour directed towards you at Cranbrook was acceptable?
Not at all. Not at all. It was shocking.
Four Corners has obtained multiple letters and documents from former Cranbrook staff members describing a toxic culture.
So I've got a series of letters here from women.
We read them to the former head of the Old Boys Association and a graduate of a nearby girls' school.
I just wanted to read those out to you.
The women's letters echo conversations Four Corners has had over many months with dozens of staff and families who have left Cranbrook. Those letters were addressed to the headmaster, Nicholas Sampson.
So 13 October 2020. Dear Nick, as it stands, I've lost everything I've worked so hard for. My role, my integrity, my confidence, my happiness, my strength. 8th of March 2021. The school will lose yet another hardworking, dedicated, experienced and capable leader as a consequence of being unable or unwilling to eradicate the toxic culture that exists within pockets of the school. 16th of June 2023. Dear Nick, staff bullying grievance. I am writing to express my upset and concern at the demeaning and humiliating manner in which I have been treated. Monday 30th of October 2023, and this was to the Australian Human Rights Commission. I am here today because Cranbrook failed me. In my experience, Cranbrook did not have a safe, inclusive and supportive culture for me and its female teaching staff. That must change.
Yeah, it's just shocking and it's unimaginable to hear that now as, massive questions about whether they're ready for co-ed or not. It seems like absolutely not.
I'm conscious to, again, comment on really specific stuff here. But I'm not surprised. Ultimately, it sounds so bad, but I hear this stuff day in, day out. It's, I'm almost numb to hearing these sort of things now.
Cranbrook School occupies a magnificent site at Bellevue Hill, overlooking Sydney Harbour.
I started in kindergarten when I was 3 and went all the way through to senior school. And I just kind of bought into the vision of it and just loved the philosophy of it. It was a school that was committed to getting the best out of everyone.
That's an experience shared by other parents Four Corners spoke to off camera, who praised the teachers highly.
Cranbrook's a very nice school. For us, there was no real choice. Cranbrook was always going to be where Jack would go to school.
It's an impressive school with an impressive Latin motto.
So the Cranbrook motto is esse quam videri.
Esse quam videri, to be rather than to seem to be.
To be rather than to seem to be. And it's a huge part of the school.
How do you feel about that motto now?
It's a lie. It's all about saving face.
What you do see of this school from the street is quite something. Cranbrook has just finished an award-winning $125 million redevelopment of its facilities. Like all private schools, it also receives government funding. At last count, that was more than $6.5 million for the year. Jason Graham Nye dedicated his life to this school.
So, Jason, why are you here?
I'm here because I really have a great love for the school. I was a student there for 15 years. I was a teacher there. I was a housemaster there for a time. My sons went to that school and I saw behaviour from senior management towards female staff members that was completely unacceptable.
Some of that behaviour, he says, was directed towards a senior marketing executive at Cranbrook, with whom he had worked when he ran the school's alumni association. The marketing executive signed a non-disclosure agreement.
She didn't put you up to speaking on her behalf?
No, not at all. This is something that I'm just really passionate about the school and about, seeing the truth aired because it's been, buried.
When the marketing executive made allegations of a toxic culture at Cranbrook after leaving the school in 2020, the school appointed Jason Graham Nye her support person. She wrote to Cranbrook expressing her dismay at how the school had treated her.
As Cranbrook stands poised to go co-ed, it concerns me greatly that these serious issues have apparently not been addressed nor resolved, despite assurances at the time of my departure that there would be an independent investigation. And I'm one of several senior women and men in recent years that I'm aware of to have suffered professional demise at the hands of this vicious culture and its repetitive associated pattern of intent-driven reputation destruction, white-anting, gaslighting, underhandedness, dishonesty, collusion and outright lies.
Staff, including senior men at the school, had made numerous claims against her, including questioning statements she'd made about her university qualifications.
So there was instances where she was going through health issues and they were genuinely questioned by the most senior leaders in that group, which I just thought was a strange thing to do.
Without putting too fine a point on it, she had cancer and they questioned whether she was telling the truth.
Yeah, which I just found extraordinary. You know, it's a great way to force someone out, is to create that environment.
The marketing executive's letter sent Cranbrook into a tailspin. The school's council also became aware the parent of a prefect had raised concerns.
That highly valued teachers had left Cranbrook with no explanation. There is a boys' club. The focus is on protecting Cranbrook's reputation at all costs.
A workplace lawyer wrote to the school advising that an investigation be launched.
In my opinion, the claims need to be looked into and taken seriously. She could cause a lot of damage if she chose to go to the media. My suggestion is that someone credible be engaged to assess the claims.
Did that cultural review ever take place?
Not only did it never take place, there was a review specifically of the marketing executive's departure, but it was run by someone on the senior leadership team. So it was a completely ineffectual process.
In a statement, Cranbrook told Four Corners it can't discuss matters covered by non-disclosure agreements, but it rejects any assertion that the school condones
harassment or disrespectful behaviour towards staff and women in particular.
In 2021, the year after the marketing executive left Cranbrook, a scandal erupted in Sydney's private school community. Chanel Contos went public with a petition detailing thousands of testimonies of allegations of sexual assaults by private school boys. Chanel graduated from a neighbouring girls' private school, so Cranbrook boys were on the top of her list.
We got the most amount of testimonies submitted from Scots College and Cranbrook, which are two schools right next to each other in Bellevue Hill. A few months after the petition, I wrote to the headmasters of Scots and Cranbrook to let them know that over the last few months we had collected almost 500 testimonies of sexual assault that named the perpetrator as either Scots boy or a Cranbrook student.
Nicholas Sampson replied to Chanel Contos immediately, and Cranbrook participated in an independent research study on the culture of students at the school. It says it's continuing to implement the findings, which include consent and respect education for the boys. Former mathematics teacher Jasmine Hyde had what seemed to be a bright future at Cranbrook. She was a law graduate who also had a degree in pure mathematics. But things unravelled when a student attempted to blackmail her for nude pictures, threatening to accuse her of abusing him if she didn't send them. While the boy who wrote the email apologised profusely and said he was ashamed, the school's response shocked Jasmine Hyde. She says she was invited by Nicholas Sampson and his deputy, Bob Meakin, to this harbourside cafe in Rose Bay.
Bob Meakin said that because I'm young and, I'm just going to say it, attractive, it's not surprising that I've received attention from the boys.
The account of that meeting formed part of a complaint that Jasmine Hyde made to the Australian Human Rights Commission. In her statement to the Commission, she said,
"Justifying sexual harassment empowers future abuse. This is the standard that Cranbrook management condones. The tone from the top, that young, attractive women at your school should not only expect, but tolerate sexual harassment. I wonder how the parents of your future female students would feel about this."
In response to Ms Hyde's allegations, Nicholas Sampson said,
"The statements by Mr Meakin could have been more thoughtful and the messages delivered in a different way. The statements, however, were based on a supportive and pastoral intent and were in no way dismissive of the seriousness of the incident."
The school statement to Four Corners says Mr Meakin never intended to offend and
is sorry if he has done so.
In the school's response to the Human Rights Commission, Mr Sampson said,
We are not aware of any of the issues Ms Hyde has reported regarding extremely inappropriate noises, gifts and comments made by students to female teachers. If these had been escalated to a member of the senior leadership team, they would have been dealt with appropriately, as such behaviour is totally unacceptable.
But Cranbrook was aware of these incidents. A PowerPoint seminar presented by teachers had outlined all of those concerns about boys' behaviour: wolf whistling, sexually inappropriate gifts and comments. It was presented in an email titled Respectful Relationships. That email was sent to all senior school staff at Cranbrook 3 years before Jasmine Hyde made her complaint.
On playground duty, boys would moan as if making orgasm noises when I walked past. Boys gave gifts of a bong to one teacher and fluffy handcuffs to another as parting Year 12 gifts.
3 months ago, the Human Rights Commission upheld Jasmine Hyde's claims of sexual discrimination at Cranbrook, including failure to provide breastfeeding facilities for her and a failure to find a car space when she was pregnant. The Commission doesn't have the power to make decisions about harassment by students aged under 18. The man overseeing all of this has been Nicholas Sampson. Mr. Sampson arrived at Cranbrook from the United Kingdom in 2012. A 2021 report revealed he was the second highest paid principal in Australia.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this assembly. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this morning's assembly. Good morning, everybody. It's good to welcome you to this final orthodox assembly of this term.
My first impressions were he was someone who was a great orator. Like, he was incredible. He could hold an audience with no notes, and he could just captivate.
Mr. Sampson lives rent-free in a stone house on campus, overlooking Sydney Harbour. He shares the home with his partner, a Cranbrook parent.
How'd you go? Well, as expected.
Former Cranbrook economics teacher Fiona Richards feels bitterly let down by Nicholas Sampson. She spoke to Four Corners after her meeting with a headmaster about her workplace complaint about bullying.
No acknowledgement that it was due to workplace bullying.
How did that make you feel?
Oh, like I've felt for the last many months, marginalised, just not heard. One thing I asked for was an apology, but...
Did you get one?
No.
Why is it important to hear those words from Nicholas Sampson?
Because he's at the top. He's presiding over these people, this culture, and if the message doesn't come from him, then nothing changes.
Fiona was a former corporate lawyer who found her love of teaching later in life. A senior teacher who sat in on her classes when she started at Cranbrook in 2022 assessed them as excellent. But things soured when Fiona suggested what she thought were fairly straightforward changes to the commerce course. What followed was a series of complaints about her own work.
I felt like this was a classic case of victimisation, of someone immediately becoming the problem when they've raised some legitimate concerns.
For the first time in her long career, Fiona became so stressed her doctor advised her not to work. She made a workers' compensation claim, and her statement to the insurer catalogues multiple minor allegations being levelled against her in meetings with senior men at the school. They include being late for debating when she was travelling from an economics conference across town, not attending after-hours activities on a day that she was sick, being abrupt to staff at the sick bay.
I've never felt so disrespected before as a female, and I've never felt so humiliated in my working career.
And how were you at the end of this process?
Broken, distressed, anxious, panicked.
Cranbrook's insurer upheld Fiona Richards' workplace injury. But Cranbrook didn't accept this and asked the insurer to review that finding. That review found once again in Fiona's favour, but Cranbrook did their own investigation. The person who conducted it didn't interview Fiona, and she doesn't know who that person was.
It's a totally unfair process. It lacks transparency and fair consideration of everyone's perspectives.
Fiona thought long and hard about speaking out.
I am desperate for things to change, and for no other female teacher to experience what I've experienced. I wouldn't be here today if I wasn't aware that I was standing on the shoulders of other people who've been through similar experiences and at great personal cost.
In its statement, Cranbrook says it was
satisfied that procedural fairness was provided
to Fiona and the matter was handled appropriately. Cranbrook is not the first elite school where Nicholas Sampson's leadership has been questioned. For 3 years, until 2004, he was headmaster at Victoria's Geelong Grammar School. In 2016, much to the concern of many in the Cranbrook community, the Child Abuse Royal Commission made multiple findings about Nicholas Sampson's historical handling of the case of a later convicted pedophile at Geelong Grammar. Until now, the two men who blew the whistle on that episode have chosen to remain anonymous. Those two brothers now live on opposite sides of the world. They've decided to tell their story for the first time to Four Corners. We went to meet Shane O'Hare in Launceston in Tasmania. He's a prominent chief executive officer, and it's been a huge decision for him to speak out. I wanted to start by asking you, Shane, why are you here?
Well, for many years I've kept quiet about my situation with sexual abuse. I do feel a real sense of responsibility to tell my story, which is why I'm here, but it's also to those that are running the schools, the institutions. It's to the and to the students that to raise the awareness and to ensure that this thing gets stamped out forever.
A long way from Launceston, in a small town outside of Toronto, Canada, we met Shane's brother, Jeff O'Hare. Jeff, why are you here? Why are you choosing to speak out now?
I'm a firm believer in justice, but particularly in the safety of all people, and particularly children.
Shane and Jeff were boarders at Geelong Grammar in the 70s when a house tutor began to take an unusual interest in Shane. The man's name was Jonathan Harvey. Harvey repeatedly sexually assaulted Shane over 2 years from when Shane was 16. Many years later, Harvey would be convicted of 10 acts of gross indecency.
Yeah, so it's a very difficult thing to live with the fact that you have been sexually abused when you're young. You live with it every day. You feel quite guilty. You feel betrayed.
Jeff O'Hare is an Anglican priest. He had no idea about his brother's abuse when he went back to their old school as chaplain. At the time, Jonathan Harvey was still teaching mathematics at Geelong. Before the 2004 school year began, Shane finally told police and his brother what Harvey did to him.
What was the feeling as a brother?
Devastation that I couldn't be there for him.
Jeff reported Jonathan Harvey to headmaster Nicholas Sampson. Shane wanted his name to be kept confidential.
I wanted him to take immediate action, to investigate, obviously, to bring the perpetrator to some level of justice here.
I approached Nick and said, I need to have a confidential conversation with you. And, you know, he immediately responded that he knew that these things had been going on with this particular person. He referred to him as an evil, manipulative person, and that we've been trying to get rid of him for years.
In his testimony to the Royal Commission, Nicholas Sampson denied saying this. Nonetheless, Jeff believed that with an accused pedophile in his midst, the headmaster would act immediately.
Absolutely. I mean, I actually expected that Jonathan would be gone the next day. And so...
But he wasn't.
I know he wasn't.
Instead, Nicholas Sampson, who was leaving Geelong Grammar mid-year, allowed Harvey to keep teaching at the school for almost a year.
Mr. Sampson told me that whilst no formal allegations had been made, he thought it would be sensible for me to retire at the end of the year.
I think that was absolutely disgraceful, that in any circumstances he should have been immediately suspended, pending an investigation.
Mr. Sampson did not alert authorities to the allegations about Harvey, and the Royal Commission found in 2016 that he should have notified the Victorian Institute of Teaching.
You had allegations which you regarded as serious that Harvey had sexually abused a boy.
Jonathan Harvey retired without the allegations of sexual abuse ever being disclosed in the school's records, and Nicholas Sampson approved a $64,000 payout for an extra year of work Harvey did not do.
Do you agree that that being the position that survivors of child sexual abuse be entitled to think, in your estimation, it's a totally unsatisfactory response?
Now it's been understood, and the scale of his conduct has been made clear. Yes, I do. I've heard what people have said about what they have suffered. It is heartrending, astonishing, and it's a betrayal.
Mr. Sampson would later say the arrangement with Harvey was not a sweetheart deal.
Well, yes, it was. What else could it have been after he knew why he was retiring Harvey? I mean, or dismissing. I mean, retirement is a joke. He should have been dismissed immediately.
How much were you paid in the first instance in an ex gratia compensation payment by Geelong Grammar School?
I was paid approximately $23,000.
Nicholas Sampson repeatedly referred in the Royal Commission to Shane's request for anonymity, insisting his actions were informed by the victim's wishes.
And I do understand that although I was being pragmatic and trying to achieve the victim's wishes, that some of that language just isn't good enough.
Was it your wish that Jonathan Harvey remain in his job until the end of the year?
Not in the slightest.
Before he left Geelong Grammar, Nicholas Sampson wrote to Jonathan Harvey. He thanked Harvey for his
outstanding service,
described him as
a wonderful teacher, an outstanding housemaster, a fine and thoughtful colleague,
and
tremendous and committed. Thank you for your friendship and kindness towards my family. We will keep in touch and look forward to seeing you before too long.
It was about the boys' club. That's what it was about.
It's just a complete and utter lack of respect for me as an individual in a school that was supposed to be caring for me.
If you had him in front of you now, what would you say to Nicholas Sampson?
I'd say, what were you thinking, Nicholas?
In Cranbrook's statement to Four Corners, Mr Sampson rejects that there was a boys' club at Geelong. The school said,
"We treat these matters very differently today."
Well, for me, it wasn't a long time ago. I think that anything, whether it's today or whether it's 10 years ago or 20 years ago, the same level and care and responsibility are required from a senior officer in the school, as he was the most senior officer.
Geelong Grammar told Four Corners it was committed to
a compassionate response to survivors of historical sexual abuse. We recognise and acknowledge the failings of the past, the harm done and the ongoing pain caused.
As news of Nicholas Sampson's handling of the Geelong Grammar case hit the Cranbrook community, it caused considerable consternation amongst some parents. Those parents were horrified when Cranbrook's council threw its support behind the headmaster.
Why the school would place itself in that position is beyond me, especially given his own evidence. There is a moral failure here, even if there might not be a specific legal one.
Cranbrook parent Brent Jackson wrote to the council, alarmed at its support of Mr Sampson.
In his own testimony, without the legal obligation to the Victorian Teaching Authority, without warning the incoming headmaster, without putting any checks in place, without any serious investigation, he left the teacher to teach out the year while he went to England. Well, I think in all the communications we received from the school, it always said that his number one concern was child protection, and that was his most important concern. And yet this didn't seem to match that.
3 months after Nicholas Sampson gave his evidence in the Royal Commission, Cranbrook's council agreed to extend his contract.
As discussed, the extension of your tenure under the attached contract is agreed on the basis that there are no significant adverse findings against you by the Royal Commission regarding the events at Geelong Grammar.
The Royal Commission did make multiple findings which were critical of Nicholas Sampson, including that his friendly letters to Jonathan Harvey were misleading about the real reason for Harvey's retirement. Cranbrook's new chair, Roger Massey-Green, sent the council what he proposed writing to parents. He said he did so on the advice of a crisis communications strategist.
Nicholas Sampson's performance in child protection matters at Cranbrook has been exemplary.
Exemplary is a description that Travis Matthews disputes. For the first time, Travis is telling his story about what he says happened to him at Cranbrook when he was 13. Travis had been a ward of the state in Western Australia since he was a baby. His mother was dead.
The state was paying Cranbrook for Travis's tuition because his older sister was working at a nearby naval base.
This was an opportunity for Travis to come to Sydney, to go to a private school where the opportunities from there were infinite. And instead it became, his nightmare.
Travis says the nightmare began shortly after he started in Year 8 at Cranbrook, when he was repeatedly abused by an older boarder.
So you were 13?
Yeah, I was 13 at the time. He, on a number of occasions, got quite violent and aggressive. He forced me to perform oral sex on him in his room on a number of occasions, and threatened that if I told anyone, he would make my life hell, basically.
And you now know as an adult that as a 13-year-old you can't actually consent to that.
No, you can't consent to that.
Travis Matthews is suing Cranbrook, and his lawyer had earlier discovered that the school had already conducted an investigation into the older student and his alleged touching of other boys. Travis says he was abused for some months until, he says, the older boy filmed him without his knowledge.
I think my perpetrator realised that if I was to ever come out, he would be looked in a bad light. So he told me to make sexual advances on him in his room, and then recorded me making those sexual advances and used that as evidence to tell the school that I had been the one purporting all of this at the age of 13.
When Cranbrook discovered the video recording, Travis was sent to a school counsellor and finally disclosed the abuse. Police commenced an investigation. The older boy remained at the school. Travis says he often saw him and felt very afraid.
I think the headmaster should have removed him from the school, especially after the numerous instances of sexual abuse that had come to light. It just wasn't okay that he was there.
Just after Travis disclosed his sexual abuse, his housemaster emailed Cranbrook staff.
Travis continues to openly disobey the rules in place, and we all worry about his presence around other students. He comes across as a serial pest.
Documents kept by the housemaster focus on Travis being annoying. The housemaster doesn't once write anything that expresses empathy for a child who is the alleged victim of sexual assaults.
The fact that he didn't realise any of these instances were a cry for help, I think, was extremely traumatic for me.
Travis Matthews eventually told police he did not want to proceed with charges.
I was very much under the impression that the courts wouldn't believe me. The school didn't believe me.
A senior Cranbrook teacher sent a group email with the news.
Dear all, just what we thought.
Nicholas Sampson was included in multiple emails about Travis Matthews' allegations. Not once does the Cranbrook headmaster write a comment about the school's response to Travis, nor did he ever personally meet Travis.
When you have a series of serious sexual abuses being reported, for the principal to not even weigh in, not a skerrick of evidence that there was an email or a concern expressed by him or any guidance given by him to his staff in relation to how this should be managed, nothing. That is not exemplary, that is substandard.
Cranbrook says it takes
its duty of care obligations to all students very seriously.
And the headmaster
receives regular updates on pastoral care and welfare matters.
Travis Matthews is now a serving member of the Australian Defence Force. 11 years after the alleged abuse, he finally commenced legal proceedings in the New South Wales Supreme Court last month.
No person should have to go through what I went through. I felt that I was sort of robbed of my high school experience.
It's a feeling shared by some alumni of another elite school, many thousands of kilometres away. The school is Marlborough College. Nicholas Sampson served as master, equivalent to principal, between leaving Geelong Grammar in 2004 and joining Cranbrook in 2012.
It's one of the most prestigious schools in the United Kingdom. It was once attended by Kate Middleton, now the Princess of Wales, and other members of the royal family. Four Corners contacted numerous alumni who attended the school during the period that Nicholas Sampson was master. What emerged from the experiences they described was a very distinct picture.
I know some girls who had such difficult experiences at Marlborough with the boys in their house and in their year that they haven't been the same since.
And we've spoken to some...
Marlborough College graduate Lucy describes a culture where girls were completely outnumbered and sexist behaviour was tolerated and even encouraged by the teachers. She and other alumni we spoke to off camera who attended Marlborough during the Sampson years describe persistent harassment of girls, including having water balloons thrown at them from high windows to make their blouses see-through, being humiliated at assembly with sexual innuendo in front of teachers, pornography pasted on bedroom walls.
There were games revolving around the boys' genitals. You'd be sitting on the sofa in your common room and a boy would come over and either put his finger on your shoulder from sort of behind or his penis. And you either had to guess which one it was or just, the game was sort of see how long it would take you to notice that it was there. Once this game went further and a boy in my house actually put his testicles on my friend's head.
Graduates recall the school's long-running satirical magazine, The Heretic, sexualised and objectified the girls. Lucy remembers one particular edition.
It was of boys sitting in the lunch hall holding up numbers, rating the girls as they walked past. So kind of the thing you expect at a sheep show or a dog show or something like that, on their levels of hotness. This was a magazine that was known about by the teachers. It was signed off by teachers. I don't think there's any way that a senior member of staff or the master could claim to not know what the culture was like. I think Nicholas Sampson should have been more involved in the culture and trying to change it or at least regulate it.
What would you say to parents who are thinking of sending their girls to a school like this?
Don't do it.
Nicholas Sampson says he's never heard of these very serious allegations, and they stand in contrast with an independent school safety report on Marlborough College.
We are now moving to become co-educational. We are inviting girls to join our school for Year 7 and Year 11 2026.
At Cranbrook, Nicholas Sampson has led the charge to make the school co-ed.
Having had a career in co-educational schools, I've always thought that actually, although it's difficult, it's very, very important that boys and girls are alongside each other throughout adolescence.
But while the Cranbrook Council was supportive of co-ed, Mr Sampson's plan in 2022 to have a billionaire parent fund 40 girls coming to the school the following year was rejected by the council.
Because it seems like before we go co-ed, we've got a whole lot of things to address and learn about and improve upon, because going co-ed seems absurd at this moment in time. But then there was enormous pushback about we've got to go co-ed tomorrow.
The council was also worried about the allegations from women of a toxic culture. It proposed a cultural review, which didn't happen.
They are on the council to hire the headmaster and hold him accountable. That's the basics of governance. And it's not nitpicky.
Former council chair John North sent Four Corners a statement saying he was unable to comment on Mr Sampson, but that in November 2022, 10 of the 11 council members lost confidence in the leadership of Mr Sampson. He said a concerted campaign by supporters of Mr Sampson involved attempts to intimidate council members via threats to commence legal proceedings to terminate their tenure. Eventually, all but one of the council members resigned.
The idea of not saying anything, ironically, it goes against the values of the school. You know, that school taught me that speaking out is needed. I mean, the lives that have been devastated, it's completely unacceptable.
Cranbrook says it has
utmost confidence in Nicholas Sampson,
and
there has been no victimisation
of women at the school, which has
an inclusive and diverse culture. It is disappointing, and we regret that a small number of past staff members have left unhappy with their experiences at Cranbrook. We strive to learn from such experiences.
Four Corners received legal threats after contacting Cranbrook, and Travis Matthews was threatened with a suppression order that would have prevented him from identifying himself. It's not easy to speak up about a powerful institution like Cranbrook. But these people feel there is a higher principle at stake.
Although only a select amount of people go to these sort of institutions, those people disproportionately go on to run our country and make policies and run businesses that affect all of us. And the way that people are educated and socialised and how they grow up and what values are ingrained in them from a young age really does go on to completely shape the future of our whole country, for better or for worse.
Why should the rest of Australia care about what's happening at this fancy school in this fancy suburb?
Because there are future leaders at school. I just think that this kind of culture shouldn't be tolerated in any organisation, let alone in an organisation with impressionable young minds.